All right, and we are live. Hi, everyone. I'm Anisha Dubois, the Global Co-Director of Events here at the Children's Media Association, and I appreciate you always for joining our engaging conversations. For 20 years this month, CMA has been connecting the dots across all corners of the children's industry. You can learn more about our work, our chapters, and how we are building the future of our industry at childrensmediaassociation.org. And this month is also National Book Month, and I am so honored and hyped to introduce to you published children's author Olugbemisola Rhuday-Perkovich. She has written award-winning books for Random House, HarperCollins, Scholastic, Macmillan. She was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. She has written for PBS Parents and American Baby, just to name two. And she is what representation looks like. Olugbemisola, thank you.
You, Anisha. That's quite an introduction. Thanks so much.
I listen, since we had our interview like 4 weeks ago, I have been pumped. Like you are for me. So I'm super, super grateful for you. Okay, so I'll jump right in. Question number one.
Okay.
You have multiple books for multiple publishing houses. I'd love to talk about how your first published book came about. Like, how were your talents found by publishers such as Scholastic, Random House, and HarperCollins?
Ooh, so it was a long time ago. So like talking about this makes me realize just how long ago it was. Because my first book was 8th grade Super Zero, and that came out in 2010.
Wow. Okay.
And so the way it happened, it was like unorthodox then, and it's definitely unorthodox now.
Yeah.
But I had been working on the same 3 pages of a middle grade novel for like years. I had been in a workshop with one of my favorite authors from childhood, Paula Danziger, and like years before, and she had said in the workshop, like, oh, you should continue this story. It's keep working on it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep working on it. But I didn't. I just kept rewriting and revising the same 3 pages.
Yeah.
I still struggle with first drafts every single for like years. And at one point, like I had my daughter, and at one point I realized like, oh, I don't want to be one of those people who keep saying they're going to write a book one day and never actually does it. And I had been, I've always been a writer. And so in that time, I had been going to workshops. I had been going to conferences. I'm a kind of like a liner notes kind of person. So I always would read the acknowledgments in the back of books. I was doing my research. In that, I did find an editor who also had a blog. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the platform because it's like one of those old obsolete platforms, like MySpace kind of thing.
Like Tumblr or something like that.
Yeah. And from what she wrote, after a while, I was like, oh, you know what? I think she would kind of get the story that's in my head that I haven't actually written yet. And in all of my research, I had learned that, when you submit to editors, it takes them like 6 months, maybe a year before you hear anything back, if they like it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to query this editor, and that will motivate me. It'll give me like 6 months. It'll motivate me to write the book and, get me going. So I sent out a query letter, but what happened was that she wrote me back. It was like 10 days later. And this is like snail mail.
Yeah.
She wrote me back like 10 days later. She was like, oh, send the whole manuscript. Because in my query letter, I kind of pretended I had written
had it already.
So she was like, oh, send the manuscript. So I was like, yikes. My daughter was like, not even 2, but I didn't want to waste the opportunity. So I spent a little less than 2 weeks just like writing the book. Like I just was night and day, like just straight through writing it, made myself sick. But I was like, I have to write this. I can't waste this. So luckily she liked that enough that we revised it. We kept working on it, and then eventually she made an offer, and then I got an agent, and she actually didn't find out till a year or 2 after the book was published that what I had sent her was the first draft.
Wow. So I love that you mentioned the editor because it's a perfect segue to my next question. Because you have the author like yourself, then you have an editor, the illustrator, the publisher. With so many creative cooks in the kitchen, has your story ever have your stories ever strayed from their original version? Or if not, like how much outside input is put in to your story?
I mean, I think it varies from book to book,
Okay.
but usually with when you have at least for me, a good working relationship with an editor is a conversation.
Yeah.
And so like, and also when I'm working in like an editorial capacity, so I'm asking questions about like, what do you really mean? Or what is this? What are you trying to say? And like, I feel like my best editors are the ones who are trying to help me tell the story I want to tell
Mm,
as best I can
yeah.
and as clearly as I can.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes with books that are illustrated, there will be things that an illustrator brings in that I hadn't thought of, or that
Mm,
I'm interpreting from the text it's really cool because I'm like, oh, I didn't see that.
yeah.
And there have been a couple times, like with Operation Sisterhood 2 that's coming out in January, when I saw the cover art,
Mhm.
it gave me, and I wrote a whole new scene into the book
Wow.
because of what she did. And she like captured the spirit of the story, but that
Yeah.
scene wasn't in the story at the time, but I had to put it in.
Yeah.
And with my early readers, the illustrator Lydia Mba, she does a lot where one, I can tell she kind of understands how I'm thinking.
Mhm.
And it seems like she's done a lot of research into sort of my point of view.
Yeah.
And so she puts a lot into the art that isn't obviously in the text. And so
Yeah.
that's like really cool.
I love that. Because I know even with me, like as a self-published, like working with my illustrator, it's like um I had to again, I'm new to it. So like I had to get out of my head. Like this is
Yeah.
like I would give her inspiration and the text, and then she would come back with something, like you're saying, like come back with something that I didn't even think of. And it was like let this be. This is what it
Yeah.
is, you know? And again, it's another way of thinking that the writer, didn't even think of.
And you get that with readers too, because everybody makes their own relationship with a book or with a story. And so it's so interesting for me when I'm talking to readers or visiting schools or libraries
Yeah.
and hearing what they bring to the story that maybe I didn't have in mind,
Yeah.
but they sort of created a whole new meaning. And that, I mean, that's like what reading is.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So my next question, what is your writing process? I know how you say you were like you struggle with the first draft, but what is your writing process and how do your stories like come to mind?
Um, I'd laugh because I like I know some people have like a very set process, and
Yeah,
that's not me.
yeah.
Um, I guess my process is a lot like my first draft,
Mhm.
like just kind of all over the place. Um, I walk a lot. I think
Okay.
walking is a very big part of my writing process. I've been thinking about this a lot since we first talked. And walking is a very big part of my writing process.
Oh, okay.
Um, just something about the movement is when I get ideas.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm stuck, I'll go for a walk.
Mhm.
That helps. Or sometimes I like to make things a lot. So I like to knit. I like to make
Mm.
toys. I like to sew. So
Yeah,
sometimes doing that helps me. Like I'm thinking through a story or thinking about a character as I'm doing that.
yeah.
Um, I ask myself questions a lot. There's an author named Wendy Mass
Mhm,
who wrote an article years ago about her outlining process. And I'm
mhm,
not an outliner, but the one thing I took from that was that she had this like making a list of
mhm.
18 things about your book. So one thing I do a lot is make a long list of just all the things that I think about the story. Like it
Mhm,
could be things about the character, it could
mhm,
be things I've overheard,
mhm.
things I've read, or that somehow I think are going to be a part of the story, either directly or in the theme or something. And I keep that list, and that can help me when I'm stuck or like
Mhm.
when I get to that point of the middle where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I go back and look at that list to kind of think like, okay, so this is what I was thinking. Is that where I'm still going, or have I moved another path?
Yeah.
I drink a lot of tea.
That's me every morning.
I go back to reading the books that I loved,
Mm.
or books, contemporary books that maybe are in a similar genre, or do something in an area where I'm stuck,
Okay.
and get ideas. I do a lot of storyboarding of existing books to sort of see, like, okay, what did this author do that made me like this,
Yeah.
that made this compelling,
Yeah.
and what do I need to do in my story to make this compelling. I talk to my cat. I don't know.
Like, what do you think? So wait, all these processes, is this what you do prior to like pen to paper or pencil to paper or keyboard or finger to keyboard? Or are these processes like throughout your
Definitely throughout, and
throughout?
I still write longhand,
Oh, okay.
a lot. Yeah, I carry little notebooks with me. I have a gazillion little notebooks, and I think that in the drafting process, it really helps me in the way I think. It helps me. So I went to grad school for educational communication and technology, and it was like it was 100 million years ago,
Yeah.
and so we were like talking about like um, making CD-ROMs.
That was, listen, I'm the CD era, so I was just gajillion years ago. I'm
Yeah,
with you.
it was like and then designing websites and like multimedia authoring, but in the cognitive science study it was so interesting to think about writing as problem solving, and
Mm,
I think that is just a way that we think about it sort of without that framework, just
yeah,
naturally, because for me it is sort of working out the questions that I have, or working out the things that I'm wondering about, or working out the things that I hear kids are wondering about, and
yeah.
conversation. So it's like a type of problem solving and processing.
Gotcha. So more to that point about like the story ideas, I remember pitching my Passport Poppy travel series to a publisher, and their response was, "We're not in the market for travel stories." And for me, that was odd because I'm like, families travel year round. Like no one travels just during the summer anymore. It's like breaks and all that. So I wanted to ask, are your story ideas ever influenced by your publishers? Do they say, "Hey, we had this idea. Olugbemisola, can you write it?"
sometimes sometimes I get projects that are like, well, first of all, I just really don't get that we're not in the market for travel
Yeah.
stories. Like you
Yeah.
said, everybody travels.
Yeah.
And publishing is such a mystery sometimes. I
It
don't
is.
And the
It
whole
is.
process of acquisitions, like we were talking before, and I was saying, an editor can love a story, and then when it
Yeah.
goes to the acquisitions team, sales and marketing can feel a way about it, or the school and
Mhm.
library team can feel a way about it. It's just it's such a mystery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get that at all.
Same. You're in it and you don't get it. So I don't feel
Yeah, I don't get it. So yeah, so sometimes I've done some projects like
Mhm.
IP projects where it's either the publisher. I've done a couple where the publisher is like, we'd like a young reader's adaptation of this
Okay.
adult book, and
Gotcha.
or I haven't done them, but I've gotten a couple of offers to do like a celebrity
Hmm.
book,
Okay.
but I haven't taken any of those. Or sometimes, like right now, I'm talking with one of my editors, and he was just like, what are some of your ideas you're thinking about now?" And I went through a list, and then there was one that he was really like, "Oh, I like that one," and so we're kind of
Okay.
like talking together about it. But most of the time, I forgot.
Mm,
There's one I'm working on now
okay.
where it's a series. And
Okay.
so it was a series. So the concept was sort of broadly defined
Mm,
by the publisher and the organization they're working with.
okay.
And so I'm supposed to be the series architect, and then there are seven other authors who are working on
Ah,
the series. So
okay.
I have a lot of leeway to kind of create the world, create the
Yeah.
characters, kind of go through the stories and then and help each author with their book.
That's so interesting.
That's been a really fun, interesting way to
Yeah.
yeah, it's been different. Like we have these Zooms and just kind of talk about our stories and characters, and I take what they say and kind of build the world so that everyone has some input
Yeah.
but there's still sort of an overarching structure. It's
Yeah.
been fun.
Wow. So I want to ask, as a published author, can you share the marketing process and how involved you are in getting the book out into the world? Like I know as a self-publisher, all that I do, but like even having that machine behind you, are you like, I want to go to Harlem School, PS something, something, to talk to, like how involved are you in the marketing process of the book, of
Well,
your
I
book?
would love to know all the things that you do because I just can't imagine doing that. It can vary from publisher to publisher. I think the larger publishers tend to have a way of working
Mhm.
and sort of a marketing template. Usually they'll give you like a very long questionnaire uh,
Mm,
where you might say like, oh, I think you should market the book to this community or this group
gotcha.
or this organization, or these are the contacts that I have. Uh,
Okay.
but for the most part, they have a way of doing things.
Mhm.
And then most publishers now don't really mind that you do stuff independently, and most authors I know do stuff independently.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, and sometimes, and you hire sometimes an outside promotion person or an outside publicist, and
Mm.
for the most part, they just want to make sure that everyone's knows what everyone else is doing, so
Gotcha.
conflict or overlap. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a mysterious process.
It is those. It's like you don't know who's behind the door. Like,
Yeah.
how are you? Good day.
And
Be-
when people find your books in like just unexpected ways,
yeah,
that can be like way more effective than kind of the prescribed way. So it's a weird thing.
yeah.
I
So
have to focus on the story.
I'm gonna do what I know I'm best at
Yeah.
and leave it there. Like
Yeah.
I said, I imagine like having a powerhouse publisher behind you is such a feat, right? I don't think you ever self-published, did you?
I did not. I would
Okay.
like to today, so I'm gonna come to you for advice.
And then I'm coming to you. Like, how do we work this thing together? Can you, since you haven't self-published, can you share like what challenges and strengths you feel you feel that there are working with a publisher, like having that machine behind you?
Well, one thing we talked about is the schedule. So
Yeah.
I think for most large publishers, not all, like I work with a smaller publisher for my novel You're Breaking My Heart, and
Mhm.
because they're smaller, the timeline was a little faster.
Okay.
Um, but for the most part, it's usually an average of 2 years, sometimes three, between when you sign a contract
Wow.
and when the book is actually released. So
Wow.
that's like the biggest thing because I know for people who publish independently,
Yeah.
you don't have to. That's just not a thing.
Yeah, like with my illustrator, I hope she's not watching, but like I'll tell her like I'm on a deadline. They want the book now. And nobody really wants it, but it's like me kind of like pushing her to like get
Yeah,
what I because I want to my goal, which now that you're saying like 2 to 3 years, I was pushing to put out a book every year. And
yeah,
that probably sounds crazy, but I think maybe as a self, but again, as a self-publisher, it's just me. When you're working with a big publisher, they have a million books they're putting out and they have schedules and things like that. So adhere
yeah.
to a different schedule. So I
Schedule.
will say, I guess there's a bit more freedom, yet freedom and no deadlines, I guess. I would be the strength, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I work with a lot of different publishers, and so
Mhm,
like I end up sometimes having a book every year, and a lot of people in the industry say that's ideal. Or
mhm,
I have
mhm.
multiple books in a year at different times, and like also those things are considerations because sometimes you might have to say to a publisher like, "Oh, I have this book coming out
Yeah.
like." 2 weeks before. Is that still okay?
Mhm.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Now it's like a juggling act because you work with so many publishers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And prior, I know we touched on this in question one, but prior to signing with the publisher, like how did you prepare? I know you said like you had like your 3 pages, but like how did you prepare before you actually like signed your contract?
Hmm. I mean, my preparation was really in the craft part. So it
Okay.
was really in the writing and the workshopping and the classes and the conferences and getting to know the people in the industry and like paying attention to who was editing what. And I think
Mhm.
the sirens behind me.
No,
There's
it's
a
fine.
lot
You live in Harlem. It's like it comes with the territory.
of so that was my main preparation. And I did sort of get the editor before the agent.
Okay.
Like now you can't really submit directly to an editor.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would not advise that. Like I think it
Yeah.
is a good idea to have an
Agent.
agent.
Yeah.
And so yeah, with my first agent, that was actually a referral from my first editor. Uh,
Mm.
so I kind of went in a
In a
roundabout way.
different, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because now even pitching to agents, like when I'm doing my research online, like now they have like these open submissions. Like we're taking new submissions January to March.
yeah.
Don't email me after March. But like
Yeah.
I noticed like that's what they, different literary agents, like that's what they do now. They open up their window to take a flood of new submissions and then I guess they go from there.
I don't
Again,
know how like my agent, I love my agent, Marietta Zacher, and I don't know how she's able to do that because
yeah,
the volume that comes to them is just
I can
astounding.
only imagine. Yeah. Yeah. So my next question, in-person networking, right, goes a long way sometimes, or probably all the time, versus like a blind pitch, even if they accept that nowadays. For those self-published and aspiring authors, what community resources have you found most helpful? I know in you and I's initial conversation, you had said that you joined SCBWI, correct?
I did join
Yeah,
SCB.
and you said that was very influential in you, like, getting connected. So what other resources are there out there for aspiring and self-publishers?
I think my favorite is the Quelly Color of Children's Literature Conference.
Okay.
I think that one,
And
and
how do you spell that? Just so I
I'm
can put
sorry,
it.
KWELI.
Gotcha.
That one really uh, just has a lot of heft to it. It's a very meaty conference in the
Okay.
workshops, the sessions, and in terms of the people who attend, the editors who attend, the agents who attend, the writers who attend.
Mm,
And I always tell people not to. A lot of times when people are looking to be traditionally published, they go to conferences and events only looking to talk to agents and editors. And
mm,
I would say that you can get so much from talking to authors and illustrators and making those connections as well. So I always tell people don't forget about those.
yeah.
Um, so Quelly is definitely like my number one. There is also the Rutgers one-on-one conference.
Rutgers one.
Um, that is also another one that I think is meant for people who have been working on their craft for a little while, and so maybe not like just starting to think about it,
Yeah.
but it also has a lot of meat to it, a lot of heft to it.
Okay.
So Quelly, Rutgers, um, what else? We need diverse books.
You said what is it called? We need
We Need
diverse
Diverse
books.
Books, yeah. We Need Diverse Books has a lot of mentoring programs, some contests. I know the the anthology I edited for them, The Hero Next Door, we ran a contest for an unpublished author to be
Okay.
included. And that series project that I can't talk so much about,
Okay.
but let's say We Need Diverse Books was hypothetically involved. It
Okay.
also would involve bringing in unpublished writers to work with published writers.
Perfect. Okay. I was, as you were saying, I was typing them and adding them to the chat. So thank you. If I look a little distracted, I was like, we need diverse books. Thank you. Thank you so much. What was my other question to that? Oh, so it's National Book Month, right? So I must also touch on book challenges and book bans. You even have book banning resources on your website. Have you or your fellow authors ever experienced a book ban? And if you have, were you ever, like, how does it work? And then were you ever successful in getting it overturned, for lack of better words?
Yeah, I mean, definitely have had some challenges.
Okay.
And I guess what people would call soft bans.
Okay.
And a lot of, when I talk to librarians and other educators,
Yeah.
there's a lot of sort of preemptive exclusion,
Okay.
because I think they can feel like they're under siege. And for educators who have so much going on and so much that they're already being challenged about, sometimes I think it can be like, oh, I can't even think about bringing this title in because who's going to complain? Who's going to make trouble for all the students?
Gotcha. Wow.
So that's been some conversation. And I think, but for the most part, most librarians, most educators, they're doing the work because they care about the kids that they serve. And so they want to bring the titles to the kids that need them.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, while I'm not going to tell people not to buy books.
Yeah.
The main, I think, the more important thing to do in terms of supporting educators, supporting readers, is to get involved in your local school, your local school board, the city council, community boards, to either become a part of those structures yourself or find out who is and find out what their positions are, contact them, make requests in your public library of the titles that you see, ask why certain titles aren't there. But yeah, really getting involved at a local level, I think, is very, very important.
I love that. So for me, I will say, like, as a self-publisher, how I was able to, like, last year and the year before, I spoke to maybe like 3,000, 4,000 kids across elementary schools. And how I was able to do it was because everybody that I went to high school with, they're teachers, they're educators. They are principals now at elementary schools. They are on school boards. And for me, that was an easy in. So I'm super grateful for them, for my friends choosing education. But I love what you said. But it's even so. I was in the schools, and they purchased, like, one school. A couple schools purchased books for every single student K-4, and then one maybe who didn't have the budget purchased a book for each classroom. But what I love that you mentioned, getting involved at the local level and requesting it at libraries, because that is where the disconnect was. I guess I don't have an in at libraries. So it's like, well, we have this process that we have to follow. You can submit it and then you'll hear from them never. So like that, even getting in libraries, that's a whole other feat from like schools.
Yeah, and like for a lot of schools, so I volunteered at my daughter's elementary school library. I still sometimes, even though she's way out of elementary school. But so getting to understand the ordering process, and it wasn't just like they just bought a book. It had to really go through a certain system, and some books are not available in those systems, and then figuring out like how to work with that, who to talk to about that. So yeah, it's so important. I think, like, as authors, I talk to friends about like how we have to be like culturally relevant and also countercultural at the same time, to sort of work in this.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's research, it's a process, and you're like, I have this great product, I just want to give it to kids in the world. It's like, yeah, but we have, it's a journey.
It is.
And we just can't purchase your books, and it's a journey you have to go through. So yeah, challenges. I'm still
Yeah.
in it. I'm not giving up. I'm still in it though.
Good. Yeah, because all
So
kids all kids deserve to have Passport Poppy.
right, thank you. So further to the point of like book bans and book challenges, what advice would you give to authors who may know about book bans, know about book challenges, and maybe trying to tailor their amazing stories now just to try to avoid a possible book ban, a possible book challenge?
Yeah. I would say just tell the story that you want to tell. I think that's a losing battle, and
Yeah.
it just is a waste of time. I think.
Don't do
I think
it.
put your effort and your energy into telling the best story that you can tell, and serving the readers that you want to serve,
Yeah.
because that kind of trying to be on the defensive is like, I don't know, it's like reverse whack-a-mole. I don't even know how.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's not really, I think, at least for me, and I think for everyone I know who writes children's books or any book, that's not why you're writing. Like,
Yeah.
you're you're writing because you want to communicate a story, you want to share a story, you want to help readers make meaning of the world.
Yeah.
And I would say
Don't do
just
that.
that. Yeah.
So, National Book Month, right, is celebrated each October to promote the importance of reading. How do you hope your titles inspire a love of reading with children?
Neat. um I don't know, I really just hope, a lot of times I'll get asked, what do I hope kids get from my books?
Mhm.
And I just hope that they get whatever they need. I hope
Mm,
that, I know I was always a big rereader, and I still am.
okay.
And I take away different things from even stories I know super, super well when I read
Mhm.
them at different times in my life.
Mm,
I think it's so much fun to like talk with book groups, and different people can take wildly different things from the same passage, even, or from the same story.
yeah.
Um, so I hope that readers can get whatever they need. I always hope that readers are inspired to tell their own stories. However,
Mm,
I tell them, if they want to write books, if they want to make film or television or paint or dance, like however. I do hope that readers can feel encouraged to also tell their own stories and know that their stories are valuable and that their story is
mhm.
precious, and that they don't have to go outside of the things that are important to them
Mhm.
to have a story worth telling,
Mm,
and that they can also expand their world, to sort of expand their story as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. So I've heard like in me coming on board with CMA and doing like these virtual chats, I've heard several executives say that our YA, our young adult audience, is often forgotten about. So I love that you author books across the spectrum, right? You do picture books, early readers, middle grade, and YA. Do you have a favorite group to write for? And if so, why?
I can't say I have a favorite,
Okay.
but I do. I think I've written the most in the middle grade
Okay.
space.
Okay.
And I think that's a really fun space to write in.
Mhm.
And I think, especially during and since the pandemic, what has been nice is to see that middle grade stories are stories that caregivers and parents often share with kids. And
Mhm.
so, like, I'll meet with book groups or book clubs, and they have these really rich conversations over
Yeah.
these stories. So I think that's really nice.
Okay.
I love doing the early readers. I actually asked to do those because they're like a puzzle, and I
Mm,
wanted to challenge myself in some way. And so, with those, there are a certain number of characters per line, there are a certain
mm,
number of lines, and so you really have to figure out how to sort of work your story into that form. So that was like a good sort of creative challenge for me.
yeah.
I'm I just finished the script adapting one of my middle grade novels for the stage. And uh,
Wow.
it's so interesting to sort of, one, sort of revision the story in a totally different form, and then work with the director and the other people, and like understand that the text is not telling the whole story anymore.
Mhm, mhm.
So all these other parts of the story come into play. So those are one thing I like about writing fiction, nonfiction, and for like all these different age groups is that it's good creatively. Like it's these
Yeah.
craft challenges and
You've mentioned in our conversation already, you've mentioned like two things that I never even thought about, like having a book being a stage play.
oh
That's, oh my
yeah,
goodness, that's like the creative, like next level. And then how you were saying, like, with your one of your new deals that you took on, like you are like you're the writer, but like you're helping, you're like the architect.
yeah,
Like that's the word you use, the
yeah.
architect author, and then you have seven other authors who are writing a series within, like a book within the series. And I think that's like, oh my goodness, like mind
It's
blown. I told you when you are representation, okay? Yes. This is awesome to hear. Like I would never even have thought of it.
oh,
Because
it's
when creatives have an idea for, children's content, they may think like toys and then straight to TV and, like publishing may be one of those avenues, but like, taking it to like stage is like, wow, that's a
it's
whole other beast.
and it's funny because when I was a kid, like I always wanted to write, and one of the first careers I thought I would have was a playwright.
Wow.
Um, and then I think like a couple people were like, nobody's a playwright, like. um, and then I was like, oh wow, yeah, playwriting, like you don't make any money. And then I was like, but children's books, I mean, writing, you
Yeah.
don't go into writing, and you don't go into writing for the big bucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I love plays. I love the stage. I love theater. It helped me I was a very shy kid, and we moved around a lot.
Mhm.
And my parents forced me into theater because I was so shy, and then I
Mhm.
just really loved it. And I think I read so many plays. I can still see that in my writing, in my prose writing. I can see
Wow.
that influence in my writing.
Wow. And now look, you literally
Getting to
built the lane.
so much fun.
So, my last question, I feel like libraries have done a great job evolving. Like back when I was a kid, of course, books, plenty of books, and there were some computers, maybe one, maybe two. But now libraries have full calendar events. I'm talking about some they bring in bubble themes and like they bring in like sea creatures. It's like next level. As we close, I want to ask if you can share a message to authors to keep writing and inspiring, for parents to keep taking their kids to the libraries, and for kids to keep reading. Like, what's your overarching message for all?
I mean, for the library, just use the libraries,
Yes.
please. I love libraries. So I'm in New York, so I like working at different branches of the library.
Mhm,
Not
mhm,
a lot of my friends are more like cafe writers. I
mhm,
don't
mhm,
write in coffee shops or cafes at all. I love writing in the libraries
mhm.
because they're in neighborhoods, and they each have like these different personalities, and like all different facets of the community use the library. And I mean, the libraries, you can get books. You can have full music production studios in some. You get career
Mhm.
counseling. Um, so the research, the reference, like use the libraries, please, please, please. Um, and for writers, I would say ask yourself questions. Pay attention to the world. Like I think that is such a big part of writing, paying attention to the world around you. Pay attention to the things you care about. One of the writing exercises I give to students is to take 10 minutes, maybe in the morning or in the evening, and write down on one side of a page what you did, and then on the other side what you noticed. And
Mm,
that's an exercise that comes from an educator named Nancy Atwell, who was a middle school teacher and wrote a lot of books on teaching writing. And I
mm,
and when you do that for a while, you start seeing like, oh, these are the things that she calls writing territory. So these are the things that are important to me, that I keep thinking about, or I keep doing, or that I really care about over time.
Yeah.
You start seeing that. So those might be the things that you start writing about,
Mm,
that get you started. And
okay.
I would say take the stories that you love and break them down. Like I was saying, like I like to storyboard, or
Mhm,
books that I love, or I do a lot with television.
mhm,
I really care about character, so I'm very focused on character when I'm writing, character and dialogue. So I think I need to work on structure and
mhm.
plot, and so I use television a lot for that, and like kind of more actiony television, to just look at how that kind of storytelling is done.
Got it. Got it. Well, that is all of my questions.
You
Oh,
so
Sola, thank you so much. I am so
thank you.
grateful for you. You are such an inspiration. Like
Oh,
all,
you are an incredible inspiration, and you
thank
like this whole
you.
series you've been doing has been fantastic. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much. So like, and like I, even when you and I, after you and I initially chatted and I was just doing my research and all, I was like, I've never heard of an author writing for multiple publishing houses. Like, how is she like, how? So again, you are an inspiration. I'm so, so grateful for you, for your time, for the resources. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank you everyone for watching.